but me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, rosters have to be trimmed down to 80 by 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. Washington made the necessary moves to get them to that threshold, releasing 2 players. Kelvin Harmon, for all you Kelvin Harmon stands out there, the writing was on the wall. I told you guys after the first preseason game, I said I wouldn't be shocked if he's cut by the next round of cuts. Here we are. Rashad Hill, it was the other player released, offensive tackle. And then you had 2 guys placed on the PUP list. Tyler Larson, who is still dealing with the ramifications of having surgery last year and trying to work his way back, the backup center. And then, of course, Chase Young. And kind of saw this one coming as well, was hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd be ready a little bit sooner. But I've all along said 6 games is what I thought it would take him to get back on the field this year. So not until like week 7 or so is when we would probably see him. That's my guess. This only means that he'll miss the first 4. But they then have a window when they can activate him and then have to make a decision on whether he's going to be back or not. So the assumption is, after the 4th game, they'll reassess his situation. And there's no guarantee he'll be ready for week 5 versus the Tennessee Titans. That just means he'll miss the first 4. He could miss another additional 2 or 3 games after the 4-week PUP List moratorium is up. So at the end of the day, they want to make sure that he's fully healthy. I'm glad that they're taking this approach. We don't need to rush him back because he's going to be judged very harshly when he does return, whatever the case may be. And I want him at full strength. I don't want any setbacks. I want this guy to be able to come out and play free and get back to the football that we saw in his rookie season and kind of stray away from what we saw in his sophomore campaign. So he needs to be healthy in order to do that. Hopefully, we'll see him sooner rather than later. And then the last move that Washington made was they placed linebacker Nathan Gary on the reserve injury list. So that ends his season, clearly. We'll see if they reach an injury settlement with him that will allow him to sign somewhere else. But right now, he's done for the year. So, it's funny because we signed him for linebacker depth purposes only to have him get injured, and now he's not here for linebacker depth purposes. So obviously they feel good about some of the other guys that they have, or maybe they don't. We'll see. Maybe they will be scouring some of these rosters when the final 53-man roster cuts have been made, and maybe there's 1 or 2 guys that shake free specifically at the linebacker position that they're interested in that they may take a look at. Who knows? We'll see. But as of right now, those were the 5 moves made to get them from 85 to 80. And so now they're ready to go into their 3rd preseason game, have that happen, and then trim the roster down to 53. So Ron stepped up to the podium today. Practice, at this point now, we're out of training camp. Okay, we're now focusing on the regular season. The 3rd preseason game is as meaningless as it gets. However, while I say that, it is not meaningless, however, for the guys on the very back end of the roster. And to me, Ron made a note of this. He mentioned this, and I've been harping on this, but it's good to hear Ron kind of solidify it for me. The back end of the roster, specifically the cornerback and safety positions in particular, are up for grabs. It was last year, if you recall. It was an abysmal performance by the Washington football team, the then football team, against the Ravens last year in the 3rd and final preseason game. I mean, it was unwatchable. It was almost as if they didn't show up for that game. Ravens ran roughshod over them, and there was like 1 or 2 guys that actually showed up and gave a damn. And one of those guys was Roberts, the corner. And remember, he ultimately made the football team because of his performance in that 3rd and final preseason game. So there's an opportunity for, I think, a few guys on the back end of this roster. I think Daniel Wise has locked up the 4th defensive tackle spot. I think Dax Milne has locked up that 6th and final wide receiver spot. I think certain positions have been locked up already that we thought there, coming into camp, there were battles there. Dax Milne locked up the punt return job, locked up the 6th wide receiver. Daniel Wise locked up the 4th defensive tackle position. So, to me, the cornerback position, that 5th corner, is up for grabs still. And I think the 5th safety spot is up for grabs. Steven Parker did not have the follow-up showing that we were hoping for to build on the momentum that he had in preseason game number 1, but that does not rule him out of still potentially making a great enough impact to make this football team. But the likelihood is that for the first time in his career as a Washington Redskins / football team / commander, I really think Jeremy Reaves is going to make the 53-man roster. I think he's finally going to get his opportunity to not have to be, the first man up off the practice squad should something go awry at safety. I think he's finally going to be on the 53-man roster when the season starts. But Steven Parker is still standing in his way. He's still going to have to hold him off. But he's got the leg up. He knows the system. He's been here. They trust him. He's actually played well in the preseason. So I'm going to surmise that it's his job to win. But the cornerback position is a totally different story. We've got 4 guys that are locks to make the football team. William Jackson III, Kendall Fuller, Danny Johnson, Benjamin St-Juste. Those guys are on the team already. The question is, who's going to fill out that group? Who's going to be the 5th and final guy? Because I don't see that group being deep enough to keep 6. So, if you're going to go a different route and keep another guy, maybe you keep another running back. I think there is a chance that they keep 4 running backs. With Antonio Gibson, juggling all of the things that he's juggling, I don't think they're going to want to put him on all of these special teams units. I could see them keeping Jonathan Williams. They really like him as a short yardage back as well, so he could double as that. But I think they like Jonathan Williams a ton, and I think they don't want Antonio Gibson as a punt protector. I don't think they want him running down because, again, your 3rd running back, which Gibson would be, should he remain in the role that he is in. And right now, nothing says that he won't be returning kickoffs, being a receiver / running back and a weapon. Let's just call him what he is. He's now a lethal weapon is what Antonio Gibson is about to morph into. And truth be told, as much as I love Antonio Gibson's ability as a running back and what he was morphing into, I think Antonio Gibson, the weapon, is much more dangerous. Instead of Antonio Gibson, 18 to 22 carries and 1 or 2 catches out of the backfield per game, give me, 5 to 10 carries of Gibson, another 5 to 7 catches of Gibson, and 3 or 4 kickoff returns of Gibson. I'd rather have that than just straight 18 to 22 carries of Antonio Gibson and 1 or 2 catches. I think he can impact the game in a much more dynamic way by touching it 5 to 7 to 10 times as a runner, another 5 to 7 times as a receiver, and then another 3 times as a kickoff return man, or 3 to 4 times as a kickoff return man. At some point, he's going to get loose. He's going to make a massive play. So he may actually be better suited for the role, which is what we thought he was going to be when he was drafted. So I'm excited to see him in that role. However, I don't know if they really want him on all those special teams units. And if he's going to be your 3rd back, technically your 3rd back, he's going to have to play special teams. Well, if you keep a 4th back, then he doesn't have to. That 4th back, Jonathan Williams, more likely than not, would be that guy. So that's something interesting to play around with. Obviously, the Chase Young news makes it a lot easier for them to maneuver the roster. Same with Tyler Larson. Now you don't have to worry about this guy's not going to be ready for the first 2 weeks, and we're going to have to keep somebody on the 53-man roster because that guy's not going to be ready. Now Chase doesn't count against the 53. Now Tyler Larson doesn't count against the 53-man roster. So you can keep a guy in their spot and not have to worry about it. Obviously, you'll cross that bridge when you get there, when they're now off the PUP list, and now you have to make a move corresponding to them being back on the roster. You'll cross that bridge when you get there, whether that's F.A. Obata being released, hopefully he clears waivers and you're able to put him back on the practice squad or whatever the case may be. Then you'll cross that bridge again when you get there. But as of right now, you don't have to worry about it. So it makes life a lot easier for those out at Ashburn having to make some of these decisions with the roster. But I think that safety / cornerback position, specifically corner, with Sip, Christian Holmes, Corn Elder, and a couple of those USFL guys that are on the back end of that roster, really, I think it's between, Christian Holmes, a.k.a. Sip, and Corn Elder for that last cornerback spot. Corn Elder being the wily vet that's, been around the block a couple of times, was here last year, so he knows the defense. Been with Rivera in the past, so there's that continuity and familiarity as well. And then the guy you drafted in the 7th round, you always love to give your draft picks an opportunity, So the good thing about draft picks are, if they don't make your team, they're yours. Most people are looking to retain their draft picks. They're not looking to snatch yours away, especially 7th round picks. It's one thing if you release a 4th round pick, that might get some eyebrows raised and some people around the league looking and saying, hey, let's snatch this guy up. But 7th rounders, generally, that's your stuff. Nobody's looking to come and snatch your 7th round pick away. So, Corn Elder may have some value to a team looking for a veteran presence in the secondary, and so if you cut him, you may not get him back. But if you cut Christian Holmes, more likely than not, no one's out there checking for Christian Holmes, and you can bring him back on the practice squad and continue to work with him. So I think Corn Elder has the leg up there as well, but we'll see. And I think also Corn Elder, I'm not mistaken, has the ability to kick inside in a pinch, whereas Christian Holmes isn't capable of doing that right now. He's more of a boundary corner. So I think that's something else to maybe consider with Corn Elder, but we'll see. This last game, so Ron stepped to the podium today, and the quote to me that stood out was, this game, meaning the Ravens' 3rd preseason game, will impact a bunch of the guys in the secondary. And I've been talking about the back end of the cornerback position. It worries me. I am not comfortable with what I've seen from the secondary, in particular, everybody not named William Jackson and Kendall Fuller. Danny Johnson, shaky game 1 against the Panthers. I still am a huge Danny Johnson fan. I'm not, jumping ship after one preseason game, but it was not a great effort by Danny Johnson. In game 2, Benjamin St. Juste made his debut inside as a nickel defender. I was not blown away by what I saw from him. He doesn't look like he has quick enough feet to be able to stay with guys inside. As they run further and further down the field, I feel like he is at a greater and greater disadvantage because he's inside. There is no sidelines to bail you out, whereas you're a little bit more comfortable. So I'm a little worried about Juice in the nickel in the slot. And Danny Johnson, I'm still confident he can get it done, but he didn't instill a ton of confidence in me from preseason game number 1. So, and then you're telling me there's no other guy right now that you trust as your 5th corner. So, the cornerback position is still, to me, up in flux. And so they got to figure out who that 5th guy is, who the 5th safety is. And I think that's what will be determined in this last preseason game. Probably above anything else that'll be, done there. Ron was asked about guys that have stood out to him this camp / preseason, and he started to laugh because he really doesn't want to give that stuff away. Obviously they're trying to construct the roster, and that's sort of a roster building type of question. But he gave a more than generic answer. It wasn't just a standard, hey, a lot of guys did a great job out here, it's going to make it tough on us. He could have given us one of those. He didn't. He went into a position where it was easy for him to do what he did, which was the tight end position, and say, oh man, that tight end position really wowed us. He's like, and you start listing names of guys that are probably not going to make the team, and then some guys that you already know are going to make the team. Like They didn't know what they were going to get with Cole Turner. They knew that they really liked Cole Turner and they were expecting him, but they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. They liked what they've seen thus far, right? Amani Rodgers. They couldn't have imagined that this is what they were going to get. They were intrigued by a guy that was 6'5", 225, making the switch from quarterback to tight end, ran a 4.5 40. So they were intrigued by all of the things that he brought to the table, but the guy's never played tight end before, so they didn't know what to expect. He's impressed them. Obviously, at times being the only tight end that they could rely on and trust. He even talked about Eli Wolfe. I told you guys that I was impressed with Eli Wolfe in this past week's game against Kansas City. I actually thought he did a really good job, and then he hurt his shoulder. So now he's out, which is why we talked about being down to one healthy tight end, which is why they signed 2 guys yesterday. Those guys, somebody, I think it was my guy Blake, was like, hey, why didn't you talk about, Blanton, the kid that, was with the Rams? I'm like, because he's not making the team. He's literally here as a body to help us get through practice while John Bates and Cole Turner and all these guys are on the mend. The minute that these guys are now back active and in practice, those guys are gone. When they cut down to 53, like somebody has to play the tight end position in this game coming up on Sunday, or Saturday rather. Somebody has to play the tight end position. They don't want Amani Rodgers having to play 70 some odd snaps by himself. That's why he signed the 2 guys. They will be cut immediately after that game with the rest of the guys that aren't making the team. So there's no reason to really, talk about those guys in particular. So, he talked about the tight end position. He talked about Dax Milne as a guy that he's making the team, right? He's not telling us anything that we don't already know. He talked about Dax Milne as a guy that's really stepped up. He's making the football team. He made it last year. He's going to make it again this year. And that's not a surprise to any of us. He has been impressive. And I actually thought he's been really good on punt returns as well. So he solidified his spot on the team. And I think he's, pretty much all but solved the punt return question for this season. I don't know if he's going to be dynamic back there or not, but at least he gives us an opportunity to field the punt and not, give it back to the opposition. He mentioned Eli Wolfe, as I just talked about, along with the rest of the tight end position. Eli Wolfe's not going to make the team, but I was impressed with him too. I wasn't expecting much. He had just gotten here about a week and a half ago. I wasn't expecting much from him in that Kansas City game. Played a lot better than I thought he was going to play. And then Casey Toohill was another name that he mentioned among the guys that has been standouts in camp, even though he pretty much was talking about Casey Toohill on that second Patrick Mahomes touchdown throw from Saturday's game. Casey Toohill has been a standout in camp. He has made plays, and I thought he had some good rushes against the Panthers in preseason game number 1. I just want to see him be consistent moving forward. So the tight end position is one that they're really impressed with, so much so that they reached an injury settlement with Samis Reyes. So what that effectively means is that Reyes can now sign with any team out there. He was on the injury reserved list, which meant that he was still going to be a member of this team until he was released essentially from his contract. Now that he's reached an injury settlement, the two can part ways and he can find work elsewhere. Remember, his injury wasn't significant enough for him to miss the entire season. Like I talked about this with the Cam Sims injury like 3 years ago, when they put him on injury reserve for an ankle sprain that he had like with 2 weeks to go before the season started. They didn't have to put Cam Sims on the injury reserve to end his season, but they didn't want to cut him and expose him because they liked him. They wanted to keep him around, and he wasn't going to make the team. So it made it easier from a number standpoint to put him on, the injury reserve list. And Cam Sims was like, well, I'm going to keep fighting here and try to get a roster spot. So he wasn't leaving. Samis Reyes is probably like, look, I've got options. I can go somewhere else and have an opportunity this year to continue to work. They put him on injury reserve. His season's done. He can't practice. He can't do anything. So he wants to be able to continue to grow and learn and develop, even if he's not on an NFL roster. He wants to be able to be on someone's practice squad and continue to learn and develop and get better. And he can't do that on the injury reserve list. So the experiment was fun, but they've got a lot of talent that they are excited about at the tight end position. It makes a guy like Samis Reyes now expendable. I told you guys 3 weeks ago, I was like, I think he's in trouble. They like the young guys. They like Curtis Hodges a lot. They like Amani Rodgers a lot. And these are guys that have a higher upside because they've been playing football their entire lives. They're not trying to teach these guys how to play the game from scratch. So it's a lot easier to teach a guy who already has the basics down, and all they're doing, for in the case of an Amani Rodgers, is switching positions, which he's familiar with the tight end position. As a quarterback, you're familiar with all the positions, especially on the offensive side of the football. And then a guy like Curtis Hodges just needs to block better. Big guy, huge catch radius, huge frame, just needs to block better. So they're excited about those two guys. They're excited about John Bates. They're excited about Cole Turner. And obviously you're getting Logan Thomas back. It's a loaded room. Everyone's not going to make the football team. If they're keeping 4, which I think the magic number is 4, I think the 4 guys are Logan Thomas, John Bates, Cole Turner, and Amani Rodgers. And it was crazy because all camp long, I was sold on Curtis Hodges being the 4th guy. Because I said, I don't think Sammy Reyes is going to be that guy. And I was excited for Reyes to get that opportunity in preseason game 1 with all the injuries. And when he played 2 snaps, that told me all I needed to know. And the 2 snaps were on special teams. I said, okay, he's done. So I thought it was going to be Hodges. Well, I think it's Amani Rodgers now. And I said that after the first preseason game, with all the run that he was getting and all the snaps he was getting with the first team offense and what he's done in his limited, exposure to being a tight end, to do what he's done to this point, speaks volumes about the talent that this guy possesses. So it's getting interesting now. It's getting to, nut cutting time, if you will. We're going to start trimming this thing down. And so down from 85 to 80. And after this 3rd preseason game, it'll be down to our final 53. So that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I mean, at practice today, not really much transpired. I will tell you this. Andrew Norwell was back out there again today, so that's a good sign. You had the tight ends, Bates and Turner, still on the side field, still working back. Ron was asked about those guys, and he really didn't give us much there. But I'm not concerned. Ron doesn't sound concerned. We've got 3 weeks until the opener. I surmise that those guys will be back at some point, back in practice, back, in pads and, doing team drills and being ready for the start of the regular season. That's the hope. No update on Trey Turner. They said they would reevaluate him in 10 days. That was about maybe 6 or 7 days ago. So we'll see what happens with him. I guess after the 3rd preseason game is when we really need to start hearing something about his availability. But outside of that, Fadarian Mathis limped to the blue tent today. No update further on his status, but it sounds like an ankle, which is fine at this point. You're 3 weeks out from the season opener. Ankle has plenty of time to heal, so I'm not too concerned about that. If that's what the prognosis is, didn't seem like it was anything serious. Same could be said for Jonathan Allen, who went to the ground with Sadiq Charles today and got up with a noticeable limp. Seems fine, but again, just something to note. I don't think it's anything that we have to be concerned about. These things happen. If you bump knees with somebody or you hit your knee on the ground, you're going to get up with a limp and then, give yourself maybe 5 minutes or so and you're fine. These things happen. So, again, I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. I'm no doctor, okay? So, I can't tell you what did or didn't transpire, but doesn't sound like anything serious. So, in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. You know what it is. I'm a Washington fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold until we meet again. Post up and take command. You guys have a good one. Take care. And we will be live tomorrow night as we talk about all things burgundy and gold, prepare for the 3rd and final preseason game, and start to turn our attention to week 1 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. I've got a lot to say about yesterday's show, so we'll talk about that tomorrow night. I didn't want to bog down today's show with that, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that tomorrow because I love the passion. I love the passion. You guys care. That's the most important part. All right, you guys care. And it's a shame that we've had to endure what we've had to endure for the last 20 plus years. But you guys, you're hanging in there. You still care. And you're showing a pulse. And I love that. So we will chat about that and anything else under the sun that requires our attention tomorrow night for the Command Post Live. Until then, you guys, enjoy the rest of your evening. See you next time.
LouieTeeNetwork.